intended me to hear. "We'd best carry on, then." I matched my actions to my words, turning and using my club with the spike at the heavy end to push my way past some vines. "I'd like to get a bit further before we take a proper break." Jelu offered another muttered curse, but didn't otherwise subject. Within moments, the two of us were making our way through the trees, and I wondered what might happen when we did finally stop for a break. We continued on for a decent length of time, with me quietly chuckling to myself every time Jelu flinched at a distant growl, cry, or screech from the native wildlife. So far, the plant's ability to keep even the worst of the jungle denizens away had never faltered, but Jelu apparently didn't trust it completely, and in truth, neither did I. We were immune to the plant's effects. They didn't drive us away. Perhaps there were other creatures on this world that were equally immune. I kept my eyes peeled and my ears open, looking out for hidden dangers while making a mental note of anything of interest. The swarm of oversized purple and green wasps that darted quickly away as we approached. The amorphous, dark, blotchy shape that my augmented senses told me was a fungus, sliding and slithering into the dark after having extended a pseudopod in our direction and deciding not to approach. The gigantic something I never actually saw, hidden in the depths of the forest, that gave a cry like that of a baby, but far louder, and shook the trees as it ran. 1,000 different creatures either hid or hurried away at our approach, as did some of the foliage. I marked 1 or 2 different species as being perhaps a good option for cooking back at the village, but as yet, it was still too early for hunting. Of the rest, if it weren't for the plant's protection, many would have considered us prey. As a backup to the plants in our pockets, I had my club, a hidden bone-handled knife, and the augmented strength in my body. Beyond that, I figured I could use Jelu's spear in a pinch, but wouldn't be able to count on her assistance in a fight. While it was typically safer to travel in pairs, in truth, it just meant I had to be prepared to protect the two of us, rather than just me. "How much further are we going to go?" Jelu said, not quite able to keep the surliness out of her voice. I paused to look around. It was getting a little darker than it had been back at the village, but that was due to the distance we had traveled, and not the time. This jungle grew at the border between daylight and night. As far as we could make out, this world didn't spin. But my internal clock told me that we had been traveling for somewhere over 4 hours, and despite Jelu's grumbling, we had covered a respectable distance. "I'd like to keep going for a little bit longer," I began, even as I watched the small woman's shoulders slump at my words. But before I could continue, something warned me. Perhaps it was a hint of a shockwave, or perhaps I caught the edge of a sound. Either way, my augmentations kicked in as they had been designed to do. I responded as if by instinct, far more quickly than a normal human could hope to. I was moving before I had time to consciously decide to do so. "Get down!" I bellowed. I hurled myself at Jelu like a player in a contact sport, catching her by surprise and knocking her clean off her feet into the soft, mossy shrub behind her. Jelu had time to let out a noise, which she turned into an exclamation. "What the fuck?" she said. A jagged chunk of metal, almost as big as one of the huts back in the village, crashed through the foliage above us, careening into an oversized trunk and deflecting away into the trees, to the tune of a sequence of banging and breaking branches. For half a heartbeat, the jungle was silent. Jelu started to squirm beneath me and let out a curse. "Wait," I said, and stayed as I was, using my body as a shield to protect her. A moment later, the jungle was filled with noise once again. A cacophony of banging and crashing, much louder this time, a sequence of impacts that caused the whole area to shake. It was like an earthquake, maybe a 6 on the Richter scale, or even more, as if the small red moon was once again passing in front of the larger one. If it was, I couldn't see it through the canopy, but even if I could, I knew that was not the cause of this. I stayed where I was, aware that Jelu was cursing and shaking beneath me, and waited for the noise and shuddering of the earth to stop. Even then, I waited a little longer just to make sure. Jelu was panting beneath me, as if she had been for a run. She was obviously frightened. After a few moments had passed, she found her voice once again. "What the fuck was that?" she said. Chapter 2.